Dragon Age: The Veilguard has been one of the most polarizing games we've had in recent years, and if you're here trying to come to a decision about whether or not you should buy the game, then you've likely also seen other reviewers on both sides of the fence, some really loving the game and others absolutely ripping it apart. Go to the comment section and watch as an endless amount of people call this the worst game ever created, yet when you look at user reviews of people who actually played it and gave it a chance, it's sitting at a mostly positive review score. So which one is it really? Often on YouTube, we're presented with very black and white takes. It's just the nature of the internet. Extreme opinions get the most clicks. But like many things, in truth the reality lies somewhere in between, and that's what I want to share with you in this review. Just for credibility's sake, I've gone through this game multiple times, 100% on achievements, and literally seen everything it has to offer. So let's dive into it, starting with the game's most controversial aspects, the tone, the writing, and the story. First of all, there's no denying it. Everything about Dragon Age: The Veilguard is clearly targeted towards a much younger audience than the one the franchise has cultivated ever since the days of Origins, and I think that's the biggest reason why this game is having such an uphill battle. The name Dragon Age tells people that they're in for a dark fantasy, a nuanced storyline, and a complex set of companions with deep personalities. Veilguard is simply not that. In fact, I would argue that it hasn't been that since Inquisition. For reference, this is what Origins looked like. It's dark, it's gritty, there's a brutality and a certain edge to it that you don't really see much in modern gaming. In comparison, this was Inquisition. It's bright. It went from dark fantasy to high fantasy. The demons, which were downright terrifying in the previous games, were relegated to common enemies, and the villain is a cartoony bad guy who's evil and doing evil things because that's what bad guys do. Now, Veilguard unfortunately followed that same path, but if your concern is that the tone has completely shifted and that's the reason you wouldn't give this game a chance, I would urge you to reconsider, because Veilguard, as much as people like to say that it's made by Disney, surprisingly have a lot more darker moments compared to Inquisition. Now, if you played all three games and you loved Origins and Dragon Age 2, and the shift in tone when Inquisition came out made you dislike that game, then I understand. Veilguard is not for you. But if you liked Inquisition and you enjoyed it despite the drastic change, then I have a hard time seeing why Veilguard's tone would be the deal breaker, especially if you try it out for yourself and not just blindly listen to somebody else's take on the subject. What I'm trying to say is, yes, the tone has shifted, but it shifted 10 years ago, and if you loved Inquisition despite that, then you have a very high likelihood of vibing with this game as well. Where Veilguard fails, in my opinion, is the writing, and we'll talk about the story separately because I think the story was actually decent and delivered on what was promised. But the writing, especially on a dialogue-to-dialogue basis, is just so painful sometimes that it overshadows the good parts of the game. It's clearly written for a much younger audience, that I understand. But for some reason, they just had to write it in a way that's so in your face, so surface level that there's really no room for the player to really take in what is being said and come to an interpretation or utilize any sort of thinking, which is half the fun of these story-based RPGs. Trying to understand why certain characters do the stuff they do is what makes games like this interesting. But Veilguard doesn't allow for any of that because everything is so clearly stated. For me, an example that really sticks to mind was when the gang was exploring Solas's memory. We'd watch the memory and it would be so interesting with all the reveals about the lore and the disproving and confirming theories that the fanbase had. But then the characters would do this meeting where they would state exactly what happened and what the writer was trying to convey, confirming or denying any interpretation that the player might have had. So in the end, you're just left with what exactly happened, with no room to think about why Solas did this, why he did that, because they already stated it. This is what Solas was thinking. This is why he did it. For reference, in Origins we had Loghain who betrayed King Cailan, but the reason why he did it can be interpreted in different ways, giving way for fun discussions and a reason for the player to think for themselves and even decide what their personal canon would be like, whether what he did was betrayal for power or maybe it was loyalty to his nation that led him to doing what he did. Another major flaw of the writing in Dragon Age: The Veilguard is the constant use of modern terminology. And no, I'm not just talking about them putting in modern concepts into a fantasy game.
So, I'm non-binary. What does that mean?
I'm also talking about how the characters speak. The way it's written feels modern, like you're not playing a fantasy game, so it took a lot of effort on my part to get immersed into the world, unlike in the earlier titles where I was into it right from the very beginning. And then, to top it all off, there's the Marvel style of everybody being so quippy, and the characters not taking anything seriously, which I feel everybody's just so tired of at this point.
Well, wasn't expecting to fight an ogre today. Then again, I also didn't expect to learn that my gods are rampaging around and trying to end the world.
It's more common in the earlier parts of the game, and some of the characters are a lot guiltier of being written like this than the others, but the point still stands. Moving on to the actual story, Dragon Age: The Veilguard storyline is presented in 3 acts, similar to what they did in Dragon Age 2, but fortunately this time, the developers had the opportunity to fully realize most of their ideas and actually put them in the game. Alongside the 3 major acts for the main story, every single companion that we meet has their own mini storylines as well, which I think was actually great, but the quality of these stories varies significantly from character to character. Let me give you a few examples of what I mean. Emmerich, a Mortalitasi or a Neveran necromancer, has a story centered on his fear of death. It's a fascinating and ironic exploration of his character considering his role revolves around death itself. Davrin and Hassan's journey towards bringing back lost Grey Warden history in the form of the Griffin's return into the world of Thedas is not only a great fan service to the longtime audience, but it also shows the best and worst aspects of the Grey Wardens. Then there's Bellara. Her arc had so much potential with its focus on the forgotten elven gods, but it ends up falling into the predictable lost sibling turned evil trope. Instead of exploring her unique ties to the gods via the Nadas Dirthalin and Arlathan Forest as a whole, it reduces her story to an unsatisfying redemption cliché. Lastly, Tosh, a fire-breathing Kunari who's torn between their identity as somebody who's been raised with the values of the Qun and the values they've learned themselves as a Riveni. This could have tied so well with the struggle they experience about not feeling like either a man or a woman, not feeling as either Kunari or Riveni. But going back to the writing, it's so in your face. There's absolutely zero subtlety, and every conversation with Tosh feels like a teenager acting out, all while the world is literally falling apart and we've got the mad elven gods to deal with.
Those fucking ropes. They tie her down with these ropes so they can blight her. They turn her into something blighted and ugly and wrong. Something she was never supposed to be. Chakra Toebra. I've got to be ready to fight her. I'm a dragon slayer.
Tosh.
I'm a crappy Kunari. I'm not really Riveni. I'm no good as a daughter. I can't even be a woman right.
And what I don't understand is how we ended up here when we had Dorian in Inquisition. Dorian's arc dealt with themes of family, identity, and sexuality in a nuanced way. While his father tried to change his sexuality using blood magic, Dorian's identity wasn't the focus of every conversation. It was part of him, not all of it. The problem people have with Tosh is not that developers brought gender issues into the game, it's that it's shoved in their throats every time they're with Tosh.
Hey, Lucanus, are there non-binary crows?
Sure. Lots of them.
Do they still get capes?
Of course. Why wouldn't they get capes?
I don't know. People do stupid gender stuff. Only men can wear this, only women wear that.
Going back to the main story, this was actually the highlight of the whole game for me. What I loved about Dragon Age: The Veilguard is how they were able to satisfy me with the whole Elven God storyline. Unlike in Inquisition where the writing was decent but the story overall felt lukewarm, in Veilguard, the writing was ass, but the story as a whole is one of the most insane storylines we've had in the franchise. While the beginning is slow, things ramp up by the second half of Act 1, and from there, it was an insanely wild ride up until the end. Elgernon and Gillenane as antagonists were convincingly terrifying, but the real strength of the narrative lies in how they were able to tie up the Dreadwolf storyline with very satisfying endings no matter which one you went for. As for the choices you have to make, while not as many as I would have liked, they were definitely impactful, especially 2 major choices that had lasting effects until the end of the playthrough. It was memorable, it made me feel like my decision had weight, and it made me immediately interested in doing another playthrough just to see what would happen if I picked the other option. This brings up an interesting debate. Is a great story with poor writing better than a bad story with excellent writing? Logically, I'd lean towards a well-written bad story. But honestly, I've lost count of how many times I've pushed through poorly written media just to see where the story would go. And where Veilguard's story went, it was absolutely worth it. Before moving forward, I'd like to first thank the sponsor of this video, Gamivo.com. Gamivo is an online platform for gamers where you can get your favorite games, including recently released ones like Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, or the whole Dragon Age series at the best prices. They've got a huge selection of games for all the major platforms, and not only that, but they've got prepared a 5% discount code for the viewers of the channel. That's right, if you head to the link down below in the pinned comment or the description of this video, it'll direct you straight to their website. Pick any game you want, and on the checkout page, make sure to type in code Kaganath to take advantage of the 5% off. In addition, if you want to have exclusive daily or monthly discounts and VIP access to a 24/7 live chat with their support team, go ahead and sign up for Gamivo Smart. It comes with everything I mentioned, plus pre-order priority and a free customer protection program. All of that for only $1.08 a month. They're also verified in Trustpilot, having amazing reviews, so you know that your purchases are protected. So if you want to get your favorite games at discounted prices and support this channel at the same time, head on over there with the link down below and make sure not to miss out on the 5% discount with code Kaganath. Let's get back to the video. So now we're finally done with the controversial part. I just wanted to get it out of the way early in the video just because I know a lot of people, that's what they're watching the review for. But now let's actually return to a more structured format. Let's talk about character creation. I have mixed feelings about the character creation system in this game. While graphically it does look good and you can make really cool looking characters with the amount of freedom they give you, in the end I felt that this character creation system is pretty hard to use. The main thing about it is that instead of just giving you sliders for everything, the way you make characters with a unique face is by combining 3 different presets and kind of morphing them around so you can end up with the look you want. And that's the problem right there. I can never get the exact look I want with this system they've created. Dragon's Dogma 2 had a similar system as well where you combine multiple presets together, but that game gives you a lot more control and so you can really get into the details and sculpt your characters the way you want to. Here it can be done, but it's so much effort. And even after about 2 hours, I was still not satisfied with how most of my characters look. And that's also the reason why you keep seeing these ugly-ass Gunaris. It's so easy to make an abomination and just have an imbalanced jaw-to-head ratio, and while it's pretty funny, it's also annoying to work with. The potential is there. If you put some effort into it, some creativity, you can really come up with something pretty cool. Otherwise, you get this. After you create your look, you're going to pick a class, but more importantly, you'll be choosing your character's origin story, basically which faction they were originally a part of. This is great, I love this, but what would have been better is if they added a small section of gameplay for each of the origins, not unlike what they had back in Dragon Age Origins. It's not really that big of a deal, but we do start off Rook's story when they were already recruited by Varric, and characters, especially the ones from your faction, reference your origin quite a bit, but you never really see what great feat you actually did to be recruited to hunt down a rogue god, so that was a bit of a bummer. It would have been really cool if we actually got to see Varric play Duncan's part in our recruitment, but overall it doesn't really make or break the game for me. So that's character creation for your Rook. Now let's see what character creation is like for your Inquisitor. It uses the same system, so you get the same benefits and struggles, but at least you have largely the same hair and beard options that you had back in Inquisition. So while I couldn't recreate mine one-to-one, I was able to achieve a similar vibe, albeit a little bit older for story continuation purposes. What you'll see a lot of people talk about here is the choices that carry over from the previous games to Veilguard, and the problem is there's not a lot. Who you romance gets carried over, what you did to the Inquisition at the end of the story gets carried over, and also what your relationship with Solus was like. Unfortunately, none of this really matters beyond a handful of voice lines and some codex entries. What this truly boils down to is the Sola Villan fans, the Inquisitors who romance Solus in Inquisition. And even then, I don't know if it's just me, but you play second fiddle to Mythal, his more important ex-girlfriend. Still, depending on your choices, you at least get a somewhat satisfying ending, though someone is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. Let's move on to the gameplay section. I'm gonna start this off very boldly. I think Veilguard has the best gameplay out of every single game in the franchise. Not that Dragon Age is known for its great gameplay, but here I feel that they finally come up with a good balance of whatever it was they were trying to do in the previous games. The maps, while mostly linear in the main quest and companion quest, are decently large and fun to explore. Going out of my way to see what's around a hidden corner always feels worth it, as there are good loot to be found, whether it's a new armor or weapon, or even a duplicate which actually upgrades the equipments themselves. This was one of my biggest gripes in the last game, Inquisition, just because then they were trying to join in on the open world boom that was happening during its release, and it became so tiresome with me trying to see every little thing possible. In Veilguard, it felt worth it. I was either making progress in terms of gear, unlocking shortcuts in the map, or discovering puzzles. And I never really got tired of it, since the effort I had to put in to find these hidden secrets never required me to take a long walk in a completely different direction to whatever quest I was doing. I also really like how they brought back factions, and while the quests are not as interesting when compared to the factions in Origins, I still really like the idea of helping out the people in the world, making them stronger and preparing them for the battle against the gods. The same goes for your companions. There's a feature in Veilguard where if your companions are not able to resolve their respective issues, they may fall short in the final battle, making it very fun to intentionally do a failed playthrough. On the other side of that, of course, if you take the time to maximize the strength of every faction and get each of your companions to the level of Hero of the Veilguard, then their resolve will greatly help you at the end of the game. As for combat, this is their biggest win. Combat in Veilguard feels very satisfying. It reminds me of those classic hack and slash games like the OG God of War with its flashy abilities, lots of AoE, and the ability to just bring destruction to a whole horde of enemies. I understand it doesn't really feel like Dragon Age, but it's literally not the same developers anymore. I would rather they go in a direction that they're good at, which seems to be action combat, rather than trying to fill in the shoes of the previous developers and failing miserably. I'm looking at you, Inquisition's tactical mode. While we don't have the ability to control our companions anymore in this game, the pausing with the RB or R1 on your controller does still give you some control about what skills they'll use or which targets they'll prioritize. And this can really come in handy on higher difficulties where you have to think a little bit about how you want the battle to go. And that's another thing that I love about the combat in this game. You can customize the difficulty to exactly how you want it to be. Nobody likes fighting sponges, but since the game allows you to tailor your difficulty to however you want, you can turn it into something similar to Dark Souls where enemies hit incredibly hard, but they don't take a lot of damage to take down. This works really well with their parry and defense system as you're going to be required to utilize them, which really harnesses the power of the action combat system they've created. It's fast-paced, flashy, and even challenging if you go for that custom difficulty option. If you only care about the story though, it can tailor to that too. It's entirely up to you. Progression in Veilguard comes in two ways, leveling your character and upgrading their gear. I've already breezed over the gear upgrades earlier, but to reiterate, a lot of the gear you're going to find are going to start at common rarity. These can be upgraded up to +10 via the workshop at your base, and their rarity can be increased either by finding or buying duplicates from their respective shops. An elven weapon, for example, will have a duplicate in the Veiljumper shop, and through this you're able to take a common piece of gear all the way to legendary through exploration and looting, as well as leveling your relationship with the various factions. The other type of progression is of course character leveling, rewarding you with skill points that can be used in unlocking skills in the skill tree, which is actually pretty massive, offering a variety of playstyles and allowing you to choose one of 3 specializations upon hitting level 20. A quality of life feature that I'm really glad they added and wish more games would do is how you're able to respec at any point outside of combat, giving you the opportunity to try out every single build or playstyle that you want without requiring you to start a new playthrough. And on top of everything I already mentioned, there's an enchantment system which adds extra passive to everyone's gear. Oh, and runes make a comeback as well, acting as a sort of extra active ability while providing some passive bonuses. As for your companions, they have their own simpler gears and skill tree as well. Now, combine the fast-paced combat with a simpler progression system and you have something that's actually quite fun to play. I think the biggest criticism the combat received is how it's not actually an RPG, which I actually agree with. It's simplified, it's an RPG light. Is it fun though? Absolutely, in a blockbuster movie sort of way, which is not bad, it's just not what most people expected. However, I would say that while I love the deeper RPG mechanics of the older games, what they have in Veilguard is significantly better than whatever it was they were trying to do in Inquisition. And if you look at this as an action game instead, it's actually really good. Now I'm just gonna do some rapid fire thoughts for certain parts of the game that I couldn't fit into the other sections, starting with the romance. The quality of the romance in this game heavily depends on the individual character. Similar to the companion quests, some are better written than others. For example, Nev's romance was really sweet and she actually had a great chemistry with my Rook. The progression was believable and I like how they developed this pet name that was so in character for both of them. On the other hand, Harding, who's not written as well in my opinion, came off as kinda cringy. If there was a Disney aspect to Veilguard, this would definitely be it. But hey, different strokes for different folks, some people might be into it. Overall, I feel that the characters I mentioned early in the video that are better written, such as Emmerich and Davrin, had decent romances, while others, like surprisingly Lucanus' romance, felt dry all the way. Does Veilguard's romance hold a candle though when compared to other RPGs? Honestly, no. When you compare it to even the previous games, it just doesn't have the same charm. It's a big meh for me. Now, the side quests though are a massive improvement over the last 2 games. Origins is Origins, we already know that, it's the GOAT of the series. But DA2 had problems where not only was most of it uninteresting, but you're revisiting the same places you've been to throughout the whole game. And in Dragon Age Inquisition, it's even worse. It's the MMO style kill, collect, and talk to me type of quests, which are just the most bland, uninteresting way you could handle side quests. In Veilguard, side quests actually have mini stories that are relevant to the area you're questing in. Not only that, but they strengthen whatever faction you're doing the quests for, so while they were side content, they were not boring to do. They felt worthwhile and were actually relevant to the overarching narrative. This is one of few games where I actually think that you should do every side quest, because if not, you're going to be missing out on massive parts of the game's story as well as world building. In summary, is Veilguard the worst Dragon Age game? No, I don't think it is. With the state Dragon Age 2 released in, I think that game still keeps the crown for worst in the franchise. What's surprising though is that despite all of Veilguard's flaws, I actually enjoyed it more than Inquisition. The highs of Veilguard are so impactful that they've stuck with me in a way Inquisition never did. Sure, Inquisition had its moments, but it largely felt bland all throughout my time with it, being largely saved by the incredible Trespasser DLC. And even then, only a fraction of that DLC was truly memorable, mainly the reunion with Solus. The biggest crime Veilguard committed is the terrible writing. And when people are coming to your game expecting a well-written story, it's gonna be hard for them to give you a chance. But if you take the game for what it is, a new kind of Dragon Age experience, and accept that Origins is long gone and has been for over a decade now, you might find something to enjoy. Is it the same as the classic Dragon Age that we all loved? Absolutely not. But is it fun? For me, it absolutely is, and that's what matters most. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, don't forget to like and subscribe. A huge thank you to our Patreon supporters for continuously supporting the channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.